The Fifth Dimension by Alexei Novitzky. Introduction. In our ordinary world, we have three directions of physical motion, x, y, and z. We also have the flow of time, t. All of these structures are the result of one primordial energy interacting with human consciousness to give us our experience. E equals mc squared is simply energy in our experience and does not include the energy of consciousness. In the crystal of time, we discover that habitable zones exist around the center of time where our acceleration is equal to the speed of light. We learn that light state potentialities exist across all time. We see that these orbital distances relate directly to the density of an individual's experience. This direction of conscious density could be considered the fifth dimension of experience. It is the richness of your experience. As our accelerative magnifying lens orbits the center of all experience or time, we see our perception is split in two. Our consciousness, the easy user interface, makes reality friendly and easy to use. Let's now take one more step out and look at the bigger picture. We see conscious perception is layered in all aspects. We see space preparing in our direction, the future being crunched into matter and the past stretched into light. Your world is literally split into two perceivable universes. The fractal nature of doubling shows that we may shift infinitely closer to perceiving the now, but may never achieve it. The now waking moment is literally one half past and one half future. Consciously, they become layered on top of each other to give us the smooth and easy experience we share. Through space preparation, we learn the true shape and nature of our reality. This warped geometry factor can then be applied to create structures that exist and interact with all of time. Space preparation and conscious crunching. What is matter and what is light? Are they not the same energy being perceived in two different ways, all created by a single motion? Let us now look more closely at the concept of space preparation in combination with conscious crunching. We know that habitable zones for human consciousness exist when we are accelerating at light speed. This allows human consciousness to properly harmonize with the natural flow of space-time to create an experience that consists of matter and light. Let's now look at an orbit through time and see how our accelerative reference frame warps a singular energy to create all experiences. The previous image shows a smooth field of a singular energy. The golden spot in the center would be the center of all orbit. The lens would represent our entire universe or experience. As our accelerative reference frame orbits the singularity of all time, it would create a warping factor based off time dilations and Lorentz contractions. This means our perception is literally being stretched into existence as we orbit. This warping factor must be one that turns energy to light as well as energy to matter. It must also properly harmonize with human consciousness to create a steady state of manifesting reality. As we approach the now, in the future, you would see energy towards the center of time being crunched and energy further from time being stretched away. This crunching of energy is what creates matter. The stretching of energy creates light. As we leave the now, you would see everything reverting back to its natural state. This means that the reverse effect would be happening. Energy that is towards the center of time would be stretching, creating light. Energy that is further from the center of time would be crunching, turning to matter. After the event has fully left our accelerative magnifying lens, it would be in its original state that existed before we began to perceive it. There really is no matter or light. It is only differentiated when perceived. So how big is our entire reality? Is our conscious experience not completely stretched by an accelerative factor of the speed of light? Has matter not been crunched to that same degree? There exists a flow before and after it is perceived. Size of experience. From time atom, we see that each one of our conscious harmonics relates to a certain orbital distance from the center of time. By knowing our acceleration is equal to the speed of light and using a equal to v squared over r, we are able to calculate both the distance and velocity of conscious energy that creates our wall of perception. The calculated diameter for the longest delta wave relating to 1.25 Hz is 1 times 10 to the 7 meters. The average of 2.5 Hz comes from using uniform divisions of 2 starting from our alpha state being centered at 10 Hz. The 2.5 Hz delta wave has a cloud diameter of 2.4 times 10 to the 6 meters. The diameter of the beta wave is 40,000 meters, and the fast gamma at 2,500 meters. Our waking state, the betaverse, is focused at 20,000 meters away from the center of time. Then our warp geometry factor, which stems from our accelerative reference frame, must then be applied. The combination of the two give us a universe that is roughly 18 billion years old. This age we perceive is only that of our reference frame in the betaverse. In other frames of motion, for example, the deltaverse, the geometry would start at 5 times 10 to the 6 meters and have a crunch and stretch factor related to that field of flow. The noviverse direction would be considered an older or more matured universe consisting of more complex structures and higher energies, while the lower verse would be considered younger and less dense, consisting of more simple structures. Complexity of experience. The easiest way to see the differences in densities of experience is to look at bits of information that may exist within our conscious antenna. The longer a waveform is, the less information it will emit per set period of time. For example, a 1 Hz delta wave will only give you 1 bit of information per second. Meanwhile, an 80 Hz fast gamma would be able to give you 80 bits per second. This relationship is true for a linear perspective. However, we are considering all of time, and our creation is not linear. It exists within an accelerative bubble. Analyzing the magic sphere. The magic sphere is a great model to show the amount of information relating to each conscious harmonic. By analyzing the relationship of diameters between orbitals, we see that each harmonic of higher density is 25% the diameter of the harmonic below. For example, for every 1 delta wave, 4 theta waves will fit across. When we rotate that relationship along x and y, we see that our 4 more bits of information has turned to 16 bits. When you make the 3-dimensional model, you end up with 64 bits of theta information for every 1 sphere of delta information. This implies that your conscious antenna is receiving up or harmonizing with 64 more times the information for every layer of density it travels. For example, theta has 64 more times the information than delta does. Alpha would have 64 times 64, which translates to 4,096 times more information than delta. This number continues by multiples of 64. Beta would relate to 64 cubed and have 262,000 times the information. Slow gamma would be near 17 million, and fast gamma near 1 billion bits of information for every delta wave. Lights, shadows, and walls. How does this system work together to create the field of energy we experience? Like lights passing objects and casting shadows onto walls, our experience is formed. From the image, we see our now waking moment is created by 1/2 past and 1/2 future. As we approach, our matter is from the center of time and our light is from the outside. As we leave, our light is from the inside and our matter is from the outside. Our experience is an overlapping of the two. This shows that we receive both matter and light from the denser orbits of experience as well as the less dense, but the direction they are coming from is opposite. There is a layering or virtual wall of information that exists at all orbital distances. The layer of information you experience relates directly to the harmonization of your conscious antenna, aka the magic sphere. A black hole. Where in the universe does consciousness form? The requirement for a safe habitable zone is when the accelerative reference frame is one that causes energy to crunch to matter and energy to stretch to light. This only occurs when acceleration is equal to the speed of light. When we look out into the cosmos, there is only one place or structure where the acceleration of space-time is equal or greater than the speed of light. This occurs in black holes. You could say consciousness forms inside of black holes, and in every galactic center we see a fractal of conscious experience, an entire universal experience existing. It is also possible that each individual atom undergoes the same experience, as electrons are in a state of orbit similar to the energy orbiting a black hole. E is greater than mc squared. With our new perspective, let us now look at the energy associated with matter throughout all of time, and not just the now moment or human experience. Let's go back to simple principles to show how the potential energy of the entire system. For any physical system, it is possible to calculate the potential energy associated with gravitational and kinetic energy. The potential energy associated with height in relation to gravity is typically E equals mgh. The energy associated with the velocity of mass is E equals 1/2 mv squared. By combining the two equations, you are able to calculate the energy of a system, E equal to mgh plus 1/2 mv squared, in relationship to gravity and motion. Let's now apply this simple calculation to our 5-dimensional model. We know for safe habitable zones that our acceleration will be equal to the speed of light. For this proof, we will make an assumption that the only perceivable experience is the betaverse, and that only the now moment exists. This would make our tangential energy equal to 0. It is not considered. This is our one and only experience, and we are not considering the energy associated with the orbit or flow of experience. We know that our acceleration g must be equal to the speed of light in order to have energy crunching into matter and energy stretching into light. Therefore, we can say that our E equals mgh now relates to E equals mc squared when considering 5 dimensions. In a way, you could say the energy of matter is related to the gravitational pull of time. When you consider the energy of matter throughout all of time, the equation grows to E equals mc squared plus 1/2 mv squared. The total energy in a system may be infinite if you consider open systems versus closed systems. We know that our velocity v is locked into a certain radius based on the equation a equal to v squared over r. Therefore, we can say that c equals to v squared over r goes to v squared equal to c times r. This then goes to v equal to the square root of cr. We now have the equation for the total energy of matter throughout time. E equals mc squared plus 1/2 mcr. The first half of the equation comes from the gravitational pull of time. The second half of the equation comes from our tangential velocity. There may be even more energy in the system of time when you consider other aspects, such as chemical reactions of the 5th dimension. Energy of consciousness. If E equals mc squared relates to the energy of matter and light, then E equals 1/2 mcr would relate to the energy associated with conscious crunching. The energy of conscious crunching is one that allows time to flow from past to future. It is the energy that allows experiences to occur. When considering the mind, body, and spirit diagram, you could say that E equals mc squared is the energy associated with body. It is the energy associated with gravitational attraction and motions well understood. E equal to 1/2 mcr, the second half of the equation, would relate to the mind and spirit of the matter. It would be the energy associated with perceiving matter and constantly moving towards a future moment that includes paths of free will and choice. It would be the energy associated with the synchronization of the light state as a whole. Evolution of consciousness. When experience first began, also known as the moment of the Big Bang, you could say our universe was at the boundary of time. As it expanded, it also slowed down in its orbit, causing it to drift towards center. As our experience of the universe drifts closer and closer to the center of time, it follows the habitable spiral of perception. Each habitable distance or harmonic from center allows for a new experience or harmonic resonance to be created. Conscious beings would not be tuned to flows of space that have never existed. Therefore, in order for a being to gain a conscious harmonic, that flow of space-time must exist first. This being said, the first conscious wave that would come into existence would be the longest waves. For human consciousness with prime multiplier of 2, that would be the 1.25 Hz delta wave, which has a diameter of 1 × 10⁷ meters. The next conscious wave that would come into existence would be the theta wave type, followed by the alpha, then beta, slow gamma, and ultimately fast gamma. Based on this model, you could say the next conscious harmonic that will be appearing in human experience will be what we have named the omega wave, or Aliverse. This wave or experience relates to conscious harmonics ranging from 101 to 220 Hz, with an average of 160 Hz. The cloud diameter associated with this wave type would be 625 meters. When it comes to information, it would have approximately 70 billion bits per delta sphere. A daily orbit. Throughout our day, our bodies naturally follow the rising and setting of the sun. This includes our conscious harmonics. This cycle is known as the circadian rhythm. Let us now map our daily orbit around the center of time so we may gain more insight onto the nature of reality. Here is a very simple schedule that outlines the maximum conscious harmonic in relationship to time of day. Let's start from the moment when we enter our deltaverse. A circadian rhythm properly tuned to nature will follow as so. From approximately 11:30 p.m. to 2:30 a.m., our primary conscious harmonic is the delta wave. From 2:30 a.m. to about 5:30 a.m., we are in theta waves. Then from 5:30 a.m. to 7 a.m., we are in alpha waves. Throughout the day, from 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., we flux from beta to alpha, but are primarily in beta. As we start to wind down, our conscious harmonics start to slow. From 7:30 p.m. to about 10:30 p.m., we are in alpha. Then from 10:30 p.m. to 11 p.m., we drop back down into theta. The deltaverse. Delta. Starting from midnight, we see that our primary conscious harmonic is the delta wave. As morning approaches, our consciousness enters the halfway point between harmonizing with the delta wave versus the theta wave. At this moment, approximately 2:30 a.m., and at a radius of 6 times 10 to the 5 meters, is when our antenna switches to the theta state. The thetaverse. As conscious tuning follows its natural orbit, it accelerates towards the center of time. At approximately 5:30 a.m., at a distance of 1.5 times 10 to the 5 meters, our orbit falls into the halfway point between theta and alpha. This is the moment when our antenna switches from theta to alpha. The alphaverse. Soon after, at approximately 7 a.m., our conscious density then reaches the beta state, which occurs at 37,500 meters from center. The betaverse. It seems for the next 12 hours, from 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., we are in a tight elliptical orbit that passes us through the beta and alpha several times throughout the day. Then at approximately 7:30 p.m., it is as if we have a gravitational slingshot towards the outer edge. This causes us to pass through the theta state rather quick as we once again enter the delta range. Our orbit then starts again. It is also possible our conscious antenna orbits along the boundary line between alpha and beta, and that actions that require more cognitive capability are what trigger the switching between alpha and beta throughout the day. Skipping off conscious atmosphere. From the mind, body, and spirit diagrams introduced in the liquid light state universe, we see that we may take posture in our magic sphere. Taking a posture is a result of ego, or one's control over their existence. When naturally entering a transition zone, it is possible to use your focus to bounce off of the atmosphere of the next harmonic. The intentional lack of synchronization with the natural orbit will cause you to swing back out, or rather stay locked into your conscious harmonic. This bouncing off conscious density occurs at all boundaries. Direction towards center. By looking at our daily orbit of conscious density, we are able to theorize on which direction may be towards the center of time. It appears as our bodies physically get closer to the sun, that our conscious density changes accordingly. This implies that the center of density for our local area in space-time would be towards the sun. When we consider the greater structure, the center may be towards the galactic center. Considering this, it may be appropriate to use sidereal time when making interdimensional technologies that are designed to guide the flow of the fluid of time. Ascension through time. From this model, you can see that the universe naturally drifts towards the center as it matures or gathers information from the fractal perspective outside of our warped frame. While drifting inward, new conscious harmonics are formed. This natural drifting of our experience inward aligns with the pacing motions of all lives and experiences, both working in unity to bring you closer to the center of time. The silver spot. Let's now consider the concept of the silver spot. We can say that the golden spot refers to the direct center of all time and moments. Meanwhile, the silver spot represents your current life or manifestation. Because we exist, we also experience. Light state harmony at the moment of conscious shift determines where you'll be starting your next life or experience. You, being a mind with wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations, will then pace about your silver spot as your personal philosophy or ways change from experiences had. By the end of your conscious experience, the lessons learned in life will have shaped your magic sphere into a more harmonized version of yourself, thus allowing you to gain higher harmonics of density. In some cases, the pacing nature and lessons learned are not achieved. When this is the case, the silver spot may drift outward as it has become less harmonious and therefore less able to create denser harmonics within the magic sphere. This lack of development typically stems from focusing on the exterior materialistic world versus your internal world. Many times people will become hypnotized by societal delusions which have been propagated by media and other overwhelming outlets. It is important to focus on your personal development and not worry about others. As Einstein said, worry is a misuse of imagination. Quantum entanglement. If matter is energy crunched and light energy stretched, then there exists a state between the two that is reality. When you crunch light and stretch matter, you see that it forms a single solid crystal. The easiest way to explain entanglement would be to say that it is like sound waves propagating through the fifth dimension of raw energy of experience. You can easily see the waves will cross paths of various densities as well as locations in the past and future, casting shadows of experience as it does. From our perspective, this would give the illusion of faster-than-light happenings. One note is that the word quantum typically implies very small. These happenings exist on both sides of reality, stemming from the lower verse as well as the noviverse. Quantum interactions of smaller, denser vibrations would stem from the noviverse, while larger fluctuations would be coming from the lower verse side. These fluctuations occur within our experience as they are harmonics of the perceivable universe, as in factors of our consciousness. Interdimensional geometry. Understanding that our reality of the now moment only exists in our accelerative reference frame and our function is a function of warped space-time, we may design geometries that exist within all of time and not simply the human experience. The geometries designed would need to be of the opposite of our warping factor. We would see that for any object existing in our experience, after the moment has passed, light would crunch and matter would stretch back. These interdimensional geometries would act and work in similar ways that our modern geometries work, but through all of time, and not just in our now. We can create antennae that send signals to various densities of experience as well as moments in time. We can design robots that may interact with all of time. Pipes, fans, funnels, and more. These solid fifth-dimensional structures would be able to guide the primordial energy to create effects within our experience. These effects include shifting of density, time dilations, constant motion of matter, communication through time, altering quantum state, and many more effects. Understanding how these geometries influence our current moment will truly create a simulation experience. Let us now speculate on some typical geometries within our universe and how we may be able to warp them to have them manifest as geometries within the fifth dimension. It is important to understand that light and matter become one. The stretched light we perceive would be crunched and the crunched energy that is matter would be stretched. This means that the proper geometry would consist of both matter and the light it emits. A disk in our world would consist of a flattened circular solid. In order to make a structure appear as a solid disk, we would need to give it a centralized stretch factor. It would also need to stay pointing towards the same direction as our experience orbits the center of time. This means that we would need to have it rotate along the asymmetrical axis according to the rising and setting of the sun. Towards the sun, and on longer timescales towards the galactic center, would be the direction of greater density. Geometrically, the object will be stretched from center. The shape may resemble the previous geometry. The light it naturally creates would also add to the geometry. Try to imagine the light coming off perpendicular to the surface. As the matter is stretched back downwards, the entangled light would also travel with it. A pipe or beam may be one of the easiest objects to create in the fifth dimension. It could be done by using a cylindrical crystal emitting a constant beam of light from one end. Again, this object would need to be rotated asymmetrically in relationship to the greater center in order to appear as if it is not rotating in the fifth dimension. Understanding how lasers and crystals make shapes, we may now make more complex structures This would be an example of a cone or funnel in the fifth dimension. Like all objects manifesting in the betaverse, in order to keep this from rotating in all of time, we would need to create a rotation in relationship to the greater center. What would a funnel in the fifth dimension do? How would that act in the fluid of time? You can imagine if you are pointing the funnel towards the center of time so that the smaller end is pointing away, you might be able to compact an experience. This means that you would essentially be creating a thicker molecule than the one that would normally be manifesting. You would essentially be making the object denser and potentially changing the atomic number. A funnel pointing in the other direction would essentially slow the flow of density. It would make the object less dense. Again, this effect could potentially translate into transmutation of an element. A funnel pointed in the direction of our tangential velocity would again be making the fluid of time denser. Remember, tangential motion is related to the flow of time, while motion towards and away center is related to density. A funnel in this direction would cause experiences to flow slower. A funnel pointed in the other direction would cause them to flow faster. If towards galactic center relates to density, then perpendicular to galactic center relates to time flow. Funnels are going to be used for many applications. However, true mastery comes when we begin to use pipes and create pumps and valves that work within the fluid of time. Pipes help guide the direction of flow, while valves and pumps help guide the amount. The combination of these systems will allow us to make machinery powered by the fluid of time itself. Pipes in combinations with pumps allow us to more accurately control the flow of the fluid of time. A pipe could be made by making a ring of crystals that emits laser light in one direction. Inside our pipe, we would want to add a fan or pump to increase or decrease the natural flow. A fan can be made by rotating a series of angled planes perpendicular to the ring. Flat surfaces or planes can be created by making cones that follow logarithmic curvatures to infinity at the center points. They would be very similar to the flat disk we designed earlier. Controlling conscious density. Earlier in the book, we discussed how our magic sphere may have a natural 24-hour orbit through the crystal of time. We saw that transitions occur at the halfway points of conscious density. With our new understanding of interdimensional geometries, we may now speculate on how to control the flow of our conscious experience. What shapes and technologies may allow us to travel to various densities of experience? In Time Atom, we designed a very simple interdimensional telescope that allows our betaverse to harmonize with bigger or smaller rings of perception. Let's now speculate on ways to control or encourage our harmonics throughout the day. When it comes to cognitive processing, you want your brain to be working at high cycles. This is why our normal function is at the 20 Hz beta range. During extreme focus, we may enter the slow gamma range, and during out-of-body experiences, we approach the fast gamma. This may be an obvious statement, but by looking at the orbit of conscious density, we see it is easier to obtain certain harmonics at various times of the day. For example, if you are already in a beta state, it may be easier to transition to a fast gamma state versus if you are starting from a delta state. The same is true for the opposite. If you are attempting to connect with the harmonics of the lower verse, then it is easier to start the process from the delta harmonic. For example, we are in a beta state from 7 a.m. to approximately 7:30 p.m., which is a 12.5-hour period. The halfway point would be 6 hours and 15 minutes into the cycle, which translates to 1:15 p.m. for the average person. Theoretically, 1:15 may be the best time of day to attempt to harmonize your magic sphere with the gamma type. According to the circadian rhythm, we are tuned to delta waves from 11 p.m. to 2:30 a.m. This is a shorter window than the beta harmonic, however the same principles would still apply. This approximately 3 hours and 30 minutes. The halfway point would be at 1 hour and 45 minutes, which is at 12:45 a.m. This would be the ideal time to harmonize your magic sphere with the lower verse. These points of most submersion would also be the points when you can maximize your natural harmonic. For example, we pass through the theta verse twice in the day, from 2:30 a.m. to 5:30 a.m. and 10:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. This makes the ideal times for theta interaction to be at 4 a.m. and also 10:45 p.m. Those would be the best times of day to use technology to enhance the theta state. With interdimensional machinery, we are able to guide our consciousness into different harmonics of resonance. For denser experiences, we would need to point our funnels away from the center of time and in essence increase the pressure of the fluid by using pumps. It might also be possible to create dams that would cause the fluid to build up deeper in a sense. For less dense experiences, our funnels would need to be pointed in the opposite direction. Maximization of an individual's harmonics would come through the use of filters as well. Similar to how we may filter light, we may filter energy stemming from various densities of experience. A filter may be created by weaving fabrics in our fifth dimension. Fabrics would relate to cloths in our regular day in relationship to the fluid and impurities. A fabric would be able to catch thicker densities while allowing thinner ones to pass by. Thicker densities may then be guided by use of pipes and valves and in essence purified. A pyramid and U. What does the shape of a pyramid do to the fluid of time? Experiments have been performed with pyramids in an attempt to understand what is happening. There are many interesting findings. It has been noticed that razor blades will stay sharper for longer, water becomes more energetic and holds a greater charge, Fruits and vegetables will degrade and rot at a much slower rate. A pyramid would act like a bowl collecting the fluid of time, meanwhile smoothing out any incoming erratic flux. Bowls are very interesting because they allow for standing harmonics to be created and amplified. It is possible that the pyramids act as prisms while amplifying spirit. What does that mean? When you amplify the spirit in the matter, you are amplifying the natural state of the magic sphere. This means that crystals will take a more energetic or stable shape. They will become more pure and more harmonized with the universe. A double-sided pyramid may be the best shape to amplify your natural harmonic resonance. It would amplify energy from both lower and higher densities. When you relate this concept to DNA, you notice that it will have healing effects. Pacing of DNA is similar to pacing of the body. When existing in your golden spot or silver spot, your DNA is healthiest. During moments of pacing is when deformations occur to the system. Deformations or strains exist when not in harmony with the incoming life state of the universe. This translates to mental stress and physical sickness. A flattened existence. When you consider the crunching of matter and the stretching of light from a singular energy, you see that using flattened geometries will have an effect in the fluid of time. All solid shapes become stretched. A flat ring may be made of dense material while act like a simple cylinder. Let's go back to the magic squares with which is the simple foundation of all matter and our conscious antenna, aka the magic sphere. Magic squares and energetic vortexes. Magic squares are unique patterns or numbers that have been laid out into a grid in such a fashion that all the exterior sums are the same. They can be in all shapes and size grids. For the purposes of energetic vortices, the 4x4 grid is important. In the following magic square, all verticals, horizontals, diagonals, corners, and more add up to 34. Each set has been color-coded in the previous image. When you draw a line connecting the numbers in an ascending fashion, you'll notice that 4 patterns emerge. When you consider this structure traveling through time or moving along the z direction, you notice it makes a scalar vortex. Let's now look at how infinite creations may emerge from the concept of the magic square. Consider our universe or experience is equal to the square of value 1. Each complete set represents a single vortex in our frame of motion. Let's now use the harmonization of the magic square to show how creations are formed. By continuing to multiply our square by 4x4, we are able to make more complex structures that remain in harmony with the universe. At the same time, nothing may emerge, and the entire system may remain a 1, or any multiple of 2 to the n. Each one of those values represents a complete system. Let's now relate this to our conscious antenna and our ability to harmonize with the crunching of matter and stretching of light. In order for information to be received, it must resonate in harmony with human consciousness at some degree. The most primitive degree is the quantum state. If our entire universe or delta wave is the 1, then we are able to relate conscious experience to reality via 2 to the n, where the diameter of each following square of 1/4 is 1/4 the length of the layer above. This means if delta is 1, then theta is 1/4. In the previous drawing, you could say the entire system is a 1, the red sphere would be a 2, and each blue sphere would represent a 4. The simple grid below shows what 256 squares would look like. It is possible to map the entire universe and our experience in this manner. All manifestations are related to the doubling or fractal nature of reality. Stacking squares. When you consider the magic square, it is flat. It represents the field of a uniform vortex that is not expanding or contracting. However, what would happen if you were to stack magic squares with one on top of the other? Looking at the diagram, you can see how you may combine simple vortices to create one that is expanding or contracting. Theoretically, when orientated in the direction of density, energy or waves passing through may become more or less dense. This would translate into the transmutation of an element or the telescoping of a conscious experience. When orientated perpendicular to this field, it may translate into the physical motion and or time dilations. An electromagnetically powered square. Each number represents a sort of stone being tossed into the pond, which creates ripples that overlap with the one next to it. The overlapping of all ripples creates the experience manifested. Could we turn on and off squares if we powered them with electromagnetic coils? Magic squares represent vortices of all energetic types. If you use electromagnets, you'll create an electromagnetic vortex. If you use water waves, you'll create a whirlpool. If you use sound, you will create a tornado. A universal perspective. With our new understanding of energy crunching into matter and energy stretching into light, we may have a new appreciation for the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Are the capstones of the pyramids really missing? Have we not been misunderstanding our perspective? When you uncrunch the matter and crunch the light in this image, you see that the two structures, one made of light and the other made of a solid, may form one singular uniform field of energy. 1. With our new awareness of magic squares, we may now have a better understanding of how a singular energy may create all particles, waves, thoughts, conscious relationships, quantum effects, and more. We are all unique individuals. However, we harmonize as one.